water service agreement with Draper Estates.
No action.
D, consultation with attorney regarding legal options for solicitation of donations on utility bills for charitable purpose.
No action.
No action.
E, consultation with attorney to receive legal advice regarding possible annexation of city-owned property located at 18001 Marshall Point Drive, Lago Vista, Texas.
Mr. Mayor, I move to proceed with the annexation process for property located at 18001 Marshall Point Drive in accordance of the timeline prepared by the city attorney. Direct the city secretary to commence publication of notices of 2 public hearings in the city council chambers of Lago Vista, Texas. First one being May 2nd, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. and the second one being May 16th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m.
A second.
And I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. All right, we now go into our regular council meeting. Let's see, Starb, note that we have all of our council members present. We have yourself and Josh. We have Danny, our chief. We have Aaron, our attorney. And I'm drawing a blank. David. Sorry, Dave. We have Eric in the back and Roy in the back, and I think that's it. Sorry, I didn't take roll before I got started today, so. All right, if you would, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and the Texas flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. You may be seated. Citizen comments. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing, other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. I have Mr. Dick Sterry signed up to speak. And we can bring you the microphone if you would like.
I learned earlier today that you had a vacancy on the golf course committee. And last time I got short notice on the committee, I didn't get anywhere with it. I don't know what I'm competing with tonight, but I just want to express to council that I have extreme interest in it, and that back when we had a golf course committee before, 3 years ago, I was on that committee.
All right, thank you. And we do have your application here. All right, that is all that I have signed up to speak. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to take this opportunity to address the council? All right, we will go into items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the City Council may report on any of the following items: expressions of thanks, gratitude, and condolences, information regarding holiday schedules, recognition of individuals, reminders regarding City Council events, reminders regarding community events, and health and safety announcements. And the only one I have is this weekend's trash off. So we have the trash off at the normal location on Ming Trail, and then we have household hazardous waste collection at the swimming pool parking lot on Saturday. Household hazardous waste is your batteries, oil, paint, antifreeze, tires, and electronics. That's all I have.
Mayor, I do have a couple recognitions under item C. For one, we haven't sent out these press releases yet. The Public Works Department, the Parks Department, the Development Services Department successfully submitted a grant to Texas Parks and Wildlife for Phase 2 of our new city park project. People may have noticed that we have cleared that property. I believe it's about 10 acres right now, plus or minus, that we're working on. But the project is moving forward, actively doing things on the dirt. So we're very excited. This grant was for $500,000. It does require the match from the city, which we planned for at the beginning of the budget year. So we're super excited about getting that grant and working to move this awesome park project forward. Also, one of the things that we may have missed, Lakeside at Tessera was named the Master Plan Community of the Year. I know we might have seen an email that went out. This is a fantastic recognition for Lakeside to have this recognition. It is in the Austin Business Journal. So if you don't have a copy of it, find one. It's page 819 or B19 or something with a 19. But it's a really big deal for Lakeside to have this, and it's a big deal for Lago Vista. There are a lot of places in Santa Rita in Austin has won it the past 2 years. So for our master plan community, I think that's fantastic. Somehow I missed it and was reminded of it today, and we see this picture of Lago Vista coming in as the master plan community winner of the year. Super exciting. The next thing I wanted to announce was KLVB, Keep Lago Vista Beautiful, applied for the Governor's Award this year for all of the community efforts of beautifying the community, leadership within the community, activity within the community. This is the first application, I think, in forever, but potentially in a really long time. I know that we've not applied for this in
93, 94.
Thank you. That seems like a really long time, potentially forever. And so it was an exciting process, but it was only exciting because we knew that we were really, really good. You know, if we weren't good and we were just putting in something, then we may not be as excited. But some of the judges may not have known what they were doing. Sheldon went and helped them, and so he didn't lobby enough.
I saw the screen.
You see, and so what happened was, even though we are incredibly awesome and we know that we've done an excellent job in our first year of applying since 93, 94, we came in with a score above 90 out of 100 and came in second in our population. The great state of Texas has a ton of communities that fall into the 5,000 to 9,000 population, and we came in second, that close to receiving the award and the $130,000 award prize that goes with it. The good news is we will get that recognition. We're going to get a plaque. We're going to get something else.
Plaque and a certificate, a plaque certification and a trophy.
Sorry, I needed help from Sheldon because he sent this out and told us the answer, and I forgot it anyway. We're going to get that plaque. We're going to put it up on the wall. We're actually going to do some things out here because we are proud. But what we really are going to do with it, we're going to take that impetus from this year and that fantastic second place painful finish, and we're gonna win it next year. So hopefully the governor and the legislator will fund the project again next year. Maybe they'll even kick it up to 140,000 so that when we win it, it's going to be amazing. But the beautiful thing is that whole application tied into council leadership, KLVB, the school system, different community groups, activity, the desire of a community to take a lot of pride in what we do and what makes Lago Vista so amazing. And in the end, through that judging process of as Sheldon had told us before, a lot of talented, very knowledgeable people in their communities did this, including Sheldon. It was such an honor that Sheldon was able to go this year. I think it was really cool that he was picked to be a judge. It wasn't cool that he didn't lobby hard enough for us. We thought we had a shoe in, but overall, getting this recognition is awesome. And so there is going to be a banquet, and I don't know those dates because I didn't write them down, but it's going to be exciting to be there and to receive the honors and have the recognition of there's 5 of us here now, and so between Dan and Denise, Mike and Margaret, and Sheldon. And Frank's over here too. I kind of forget that guy, but that's the people that are doing the work. And so
All volunteers.
all volunteers, all the time out in the community, doing the things that are supplementing what the city's doing, and then sometimes we're supplementing what they're doing. Last week, Eric had them out there laying bricks and doing bricks and mortar and cutting pipe, and you name it, they were out there. I think I had a few pictures of Dan out there doing something. I just kept driving, just for the record. But all these things, Mayor, these are things that we're very excited about. This is what this recognition of individuals is really out there for, so that we can all take pride in the things that we have here in our community and continue to build. So thanks to them again, and thanks for the recognition. When we get those plaques and the pictures, we're going to use the wall space now, and we're going to decorate, make it look really sharp. And so when we come to ask for more from the council for the next set of projects, remember, we got second place, so it's really important. Thanks, Mayor.
Sir. Oh, and I wanted to kind of piggyback off your business journal. I haven't seen the actual article. I just heard this on the radio, but Lago Vista was rated #1 in Travis County as the best place to buy a home. It's a buyer's market in Lago, with our median home value at about $267,000.
Was a place to be, Mayor.
Yes, but even that's still fairly high for a starter home. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sure some of you know, and for those that don't, we're coming up on Lago Fest again. I'll be having that in May. We have some great bands lined up. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a whole bunch of new activities for the kids. We need volunteers. We need people to come and help us with that. The only way this works is when the city gets behind it, because it's way too much work for a few people to do. So if you have the time, if you have the inclination, please go on lagofest.com and sign up as a volunteer. The nice thing about it is if you volunteer, you get in on the grounds, you get to park close. If you would consider helping us, please sign up, come on out, and plan on being there in May and having a good time.
And we also have 2 coordinators that are handling.
Oh, yeah, we do have a couple of volunteer coordinators this year. Last year, we had a volunteer coordinator who was coming from Colorado whose plane didn't get here. And quite honestly, it was a mess. But this year, we have a couple of people here in the community that will be there. They're doing a great job of setting things up. So if you had a bad experience last year, give us another chance. Come on back.
Do we have a spare serpentine belt for our generator?
We have 2 generators. We're not even going to take a chance on one belt. We're going to have 2 generators.
Right. Anyone else? All right, so we shall move on to presentation. Item number 3 is our Scenic City update.
Mayor, it gives me great pleasure to show the people out there this letter that we've received from Scenic Texas, accepting our Scenic City certification application. Down here it says, congratulations, your Scenic City program application has been submitted online. This took a lot of work on the parts of a couple of other councilmen, Councilman Weatherly and also Robbins helped out on this to a great extent. We took about 3 months to get all these different sections completed. And then we had our Director of Development Services, Roy Jambor, look over our application, and he gave us some insight on some of the things that we needed to shore up to give us a little better chance of being recognized. This is a program that will allow our Chamber of Commerce to market our city as a scenic city, and hopefully will bring some more commercial interest in our city of Lago Vista. Thank you, Mayor.
And how long was that electronic application?
It was 12 sections long, and it took me almost a full day to input, because it was grueling, but we got it done.
I think I heard you say, what, 102 pages?
Yeah, as far as looking at something in terms of a Word document, is 102 pages. So, We got it done.
Thanks for all that work. Thank all of y'all. All right. Public hearings and discussion, item number 4. Lago Vista City Council will hold a public hearing and discuss a potential conditional use permit approval pursuant to Section 17 of Chapter 14 of the Lago Vista Code of Ordinances to allow exceptions to the accessory building standards otherwise applicable at 4031 Outpost Trace in Country Club Estate, Section 9, Lot 2245 Alpha. And I will open the public hearing is already open, and we'll start with our staff presentation.
Yes, sir. As you guys will undoubtedly recall, this was remanded back to the P&Z because the original application and packet that was considered by P&Z was not aware of the fact that there was setback issues, not just on the new building that was being proposed, but an existing building that had already been built in years past. So because that packet didn't reflect it, it was possible that people would have looked at the packet, decided they had no problem in it, and those people would have been misinformed because those issues were not identified. So we re-advertised, re-held the hearing. It was remanded. Last Thursday night it was considered, and what you had was a unanimous recommendation to go with the existing recommendation you already had in terms of the relief from the building materials. They added the portions about the setbacks. I need to apologize. My staff report actually has the numbers transposed between the in terms of the encroachment in the setback. They're reversed. The smaller number is for the existing pool pavilion as opposed to the way it reads in my staff report. But they made a unanimous recommendation to that the setbacks were okay under the condition, which is now legal and appropriate because they have a variance from the Board of Adjustment. They can now require that it be conditioned upon that fence or one similar in characteristics be maintained. So that is no longer an issue as well. They have obtained that variance.
So everything's been worked out.
Yes. We have done everything we know how to do, and pending what you do here about the new buildings, once again, what comes from P&Z is a recommendation, but the fence is 100% legal. If a storm knocks it down to the ground, it can be rebuilt immediately.
Anybody have questions for Roy? All right, well, this is a public hearing and is open, so if anybody on the public would like to address council or would speak on behalf as the property owner here, do y'all care to speak at all?
Feel free. Okay. I just, and I'm going to apologize to the at least 4 people in the room that heard this at the P&Z meeting. But I just wanted to kind of share what this process has felt like to us. We've applied for and been granted 5 different permits since we bought this house, including an irrigation initially, 2 fence, the pool itself, and then the pool pavilion. We're now being told, not only years later, but for the first time, that at least 3 of those were not legitimate in some way, shape, or form. That 3 of these structures are non-compliant in some way, including the fences and the pool pavilion, which was not only permitted and granted, but inspected and looked at and everything. That one, for us, seems like it should have raised concerns. I mean, when somebody come out and looks at the process of the pouring of the slab and everything, that somebody would have noticed that it was not in compliance with whatever setback requirement it was. There was a lot of discussion, and I don't remember which meeting it was, whether it was here or the P&Z, but at least at the P&Z, about how the fence contractors are taking advantage or submitting things and not following through or not doing what they've said. But I also feel like the city kind of didn't assume any responsibility for how they review these applications, for accepting kind of sloppy paperwork, lacking details and other things. And yet, and we were trusting the process and trusting our contractors and everything as we did this, in terms of having no idea that there was even any issues. I feel like at least in one or both meetings, we were kind of cast as negligent at minimum and scheming potentially to manipulate the system or ignore the rules. And while that might not be factually or legally relevant, just wanted to say that the whole process has felt kind of bad and offensive to us. We've lived here for 5 years or almost 5 years. We've done nothing but try to beautify our property in the time that we have been here. My daughter and son-in-law both work for the city and have for many years, and we've been very proud to live here. And so this process has left a little bad taste in our mouth. And so I just wanted to communicate that to everyone in hopes that something can be shored up or firmed up in a way that prevents this for people in the future. Because I assume that other people are doing or attempting to do similar things. So that was it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I'm sorry I forgot to announce this, but when you come to the podium, please announce your name and address for our city secretary so she can make record of it.
My name is William Brown, Bill Brown, and I live in Twisting Trail, Lago Vista. And the reason I'm here is I formerly rented not large, but many units out to the folks in town. And I sold it. And now I'm a renter. And in order to keep what I've got in renting is $4,000 a month, and I'm no longer a gainful employee now. And so I need permission to build a garage that will agree with everything.
Okay. Mr. Brown, I'm going to hold you up because the issue that you're speaking on is our next agenda item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if you don't mind.
Oh, no. No, I don't mind.
All right, thank you. So anybody else regarding the issue with the permits? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:03 p.m. And council?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion. Oh, do we have to have a discussion, or can I make a
No.
motion?
You
can make a motion.
You can do whatever you would like at this point.
I make a motion that we approve this application according to the changes that were made at P&Z. I sat through all the P&Z meetings on this property, so I'm very much aware of it, and I think we need to approve it for 4031 Outpost Trace, Country Club Estate, Section 9, Lot 2245A.
And I heartily second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. And hopefully this consolidates everything, and from here out, it'll be clear.
Yeah. If we come again, we'll be able
All right. Number 5, the Lago Vista City Council will hold a public hearing for discussion only of a potential conditional use permit approval pursuant to Section 17 of Chapter 14 of the Lago Vista Code of Ordinances to allow exceptions to the accessory building standards otherwise applicable at 20703 Twisting Trail, Country Club Estates, Section 10, Lot 2803 Bravo. And I will open the public hearing at 7:06 p.m.
Yes, sir. This is a similar application to the one you just heard, the primary difference being it'll be the first time you've seen it and the first time it's been advertised for a public hearing. It is, again, the idea of adding an accessory structure to the house that does not conform to the requirements for materials. The primary difference is that this one will be visible from the front of the lot, and there is no improvements whatsoever to obstruct the view of the building from the public right-of-way.
It's a metal building, correct?
It's a metal building. Should be a picture of it in your packet. There is a chain link fence in front of not just this property, which is 3 lots that have been consolidated. Your packet only shows 2 of the 3 lots, but it is in fact 3 lots. And there is common ownership on lots at either end that are also behind that same chain link fence. Probably the only, my description would be the only difference to the appearance issue was that it was recessed. It was not as close to the front of the lot as it could be. It was pushed back a bit. I'm not so sure that will cure the appearance issues, if you will, but that's what's in front of you. And by the way, the recommendation from P&Z was a unanimous decision not to recommend approval.
Questions for Roy? All right, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody that would like to speak on this at the time, Mr. Brown?
I think I've said enough before, and I'd just like to be considered to go forth with this building because I'm going to make it match with the rest of the house and all the property. And the building is not going to be a steel building, it's going to be wood, all of it. And I'll make it with the overhangs and everything that shows on the house. And I'll make everything match because I've got 5 lots there and I'm trying to keep it up. But I'm a renter now, so I need permission to build something that I can store some of the things that I've got. And this $4,000 a year is gonna go on forever.
So you're renting this property?
Pardon?
You're renting this property here?
No, I own the property.
Oh,
I sold, I had a rental unit that
Oh,
I
okay.
rented to people. And I sold the unit and now I'm a renter. And that's what I'm trying to do is to, trying to save $4,000 a month by building a unit that I can facilitate anything that I've got, which is not much, but at least I won't be renting from someone else.
so you're saying it's a wood building, not a steel garage as in the
Oh, no,
picture?
no steel garages. This is all wood. It'll match the house.
The house
Yep.
is,
That's,
the house
that's,
made of stone?
Pardon?
Does the house has a stone front?
Yeah, the stone front is on the house.
And
But
you're gonna make this match the stone front on the house?
I'm gonna make it match from what I was told that I could go up maybe 4 feet and go around the periphery of the house
The house
without
or the attached-
building stones all the way up, for a garage.
Roy, does he have to bring you the drawings to show you what that's
Let
gonna
me
look like?
clarify. The application that is in front of you tonight is the previous application for a steel building
Right.
that's in your packet. Subsequent to the P&Z meeting, he has considered and has started an application for a building permit that includes a completely wood structure. That permit has not been approved because it also doesn't meet the ordinance for exactly the same reason you just mentioned. It's required to meet the masonry and all that sort of thing. We informed him of his ability, if he chose to withdraw this application and to correct the application that he has filed in front of us. He decided he wanted to go ahead and pursue this. He basically said, thank you for informing me, but I'm gonna go ahead and, and he has, he's paid his money. He's entitled to a decision on the application as submitted. So that is what is in front of you.
But it will not be a metal building.
But if we
It'll be
approve
wood.
this, we're approving
You're approving the metal building.
metal building.
The metal building. He doesn't need approval if he complies with the ordinance by including the stone and all those other things. But as of now, I don't believe we have a completely acceptable application for that other building. And regardless, it won't come in front of you if it in fact qualifies for a permit. We'll simply issue the permit.
Okay.
So we've done all the work of wanting to have fronts look a certain way.
Right. Well, and this one has already been
Declined by.
declined by planning and zoning, so.
There's a recommendation to you guys to not approve it.
Right.
The
So the-
conditional use of permits are yours to
So,
approve or deny.
if I'm not mistaken, to go against their recommendation, that takes a supermajority, right?
Well, whatever I do is I'm gonna make it right, make it look good, and I live there.
And yes, as Don pointed out, this is only for discussion tonight, so this would come back April 18th,
It may not.
unless he
Unless
decides
he
to pull it
withdraws.
and bring
What-
something in compliance.
Well, there's two things that could happen. One, he could comply and withdraw. Second one, he could submit a different, and if it doesn't comply, then he'll have a different conditional use permit that has to go back through P&C before it gets to us. So it's-
Same way as the last one.
Yeah.
It's a different application.
Yeah.
You have to have a valid recommendation. That, since we post the packets on the website, those need to be accurate, because otherwise people will rely on that packet and might stay on.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or? All right, well, I'll go ahead and leave this public hearing open at this moment. And we will move on to action items. Number 6, discussion and action on resolution 19-1793, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, appointing an individual to fill an unexpired vacant term as a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mayor, this item was previously presented to City Council, and what we presented at that time was the vacancy was created when Mr. Michael Panter resigned from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. This, if filled, this position will complete Mr. Panter's term, which will be ending on January 1st, 2020.
So it's the remainder of this calendar year.
Yes, sir.
All right, and do we have,
So I'm the liaison for the Parks and Recs, and I spoke to Steve Johnston today, and he's still interested in the position, and he's a volunteer, and that's going to be my recommendation. I've also talked to the chairman of the Parks and Rec, and he agrees. We'd like to have him on board. He's got some experience in the Parks and Recs field, so seems like a perfect fit. So anyone has any discussion, I can make a motion. We'll approve Steve Johnston for the Parks and Recs Committee.
I'll second.
And Mayor, we just to make it clear, we approved the resolution
Oh, right.
with that name in there.
Okay.
Just because we always do these with resolutions, so we just stay consistent.
okay, so I have a motion to accept resolution 19-1793, I'm sorry, tell me his name again?
Steve Johnson.
Steve
With
Johnston.
Steve Johnson. And I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries, unanimous. All right, number 7, discussion and action on resolution number 19-1794, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, appointing an individual to fill an unexpired vacant term as a member of the Golf Course Advisory Committee and to otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mayor, this item has come before council previously. This would be the second hearing. The Golf Course Advisory Committee has a vacancy due to the resignation of Mr. Eric Hutchins. This term will be for a period ending January 1st, 2021. As with the last item, Mayor, if a recommendation is made on this one, it would be to insert the name with the approval of the resolution.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 19-1794 with the name of Tom Voth as new member of our advisory committee.
How do you spell his last name?
VOTH.
I think I can vote. DOT.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. All right, number 8, discussion and possible action on Resolution 19-1795, a resolution by the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, designating certain officials as being responsible for, acting for, and on behalf of the city in dealing with the Texas Public Utilities Commission, certifying that the city is requesting consideration of the application for a certificate of convenience and necessity for water and wastewater. And who has the lead on this?
Mayor, this is going to be Eric.
Eric, okay.
He's on his way now.
I was trapped. Mayor and council, good evening. Just, I don't know, it's a mouthful, but a certificate of convenience and necessity, all it is basically grants the city the right to, and only the city, the right to supply water and sewer to a certain designated area of the city. So all the entities around us have one except the city of Lago Vista. Lo and behold, we noted it, and we noticed it during when we were trying to negotiate some of the pending lawsuits that the city didn't have a CCN, which is Certificate of Convenience and Necessity. And that is awarded, it used to be awarded by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Now it's awarded by the Public Utilities Commission. It's an 18-month-long process. Typically, you have an attorney that helps you out with a process that fills out the application and everything else. One other issue that we noticed was that we have the Jonestown CCN boundary is currently covering the area where our water plant is, which is something that you really don't want to have. We can't fix that problem at this point, but hopefully in the future we can fix that. But any questions for me? I know
This won't fix that.
this will not fix that one little issue. We needed their blessing before we could do that, and we weren't able to get their okay on it.
Does this give them water from us?
No, sir. All this is, if a developer comes in, they have to come and ask for water and sewer from the city. That's what this does. Currently, if a developer comes in, he can say that I don't want water or sewer from you. I'm going to build my own municipal utilities district in this development. So, but thankfully that hasn't happened. So that's one of the big things why cities and entities like to have those. Yes, sir.
Frank.
I agree with you. I read your lips.
What's that?
We don't need a CCN for the city limits or the ETJ, correct?
That's correct, council member. The city doesn't have to have a CCN. However, it's highly recommended that you do have one if to make clear what your service area is. It also provides you some protections. And as Eric has laid out, it makes it clear who's one has the sole authority to provide the service and who has the obligation to provide the service. So it's a double-edged sword, if you will. But if we have our CCN, then there are some additional steps that we can take to approach Jonestown with regard to getting our equipment in our CCN. So there will be some additional steps. This will help with that process.
We cannot do that until we have our CCN.
Not without their permission, but once we have a CCN, then we have some additional authority that we can approach them. So it's a step process. This is step one.
Why wouldn't Jonestown give their blessing?
I will not get into that, Council.
Huh?
I'd rather not get into that. It's there, if it's a city CCN, there's no reason for anybody to give up their area. There's no benefit to them to give that up.
Is it a large area that they'd be giving up?
Not a large area. There's some areas, one location is where our new water plant is, that including the water plant and some of those areas to the edge of the city limits. That's where we have utilities, and the Jonestown Water Supply does not. The other location is in the hollows, right at the entrance of the hollows. So their boundaries, for whatever reason, it just comes way deep inside our CCN boundary for our service area, or our future service area, if you will. But with the way that they're set up is they'll have to discuss it. They'll have to see if it really is in their benefit. The first response I got was, no, right now we're not interested. So. Okay. But it's not as big of a deal.
They supply water now.
Yeah,
it's not as big of a deal. It's just I just wanted to clarify that it doesn't include all of the city limits. There are some areas where we currently provide utilities that are outside there will be outside and inside another CCN boundary. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I hope we don't leave folks with the impression that somebody else could serve inside the city limits or in our ETJ without our permission. They cannot.
That's correct. They can't serve within our, right.
Secondly, forming a special district like a municipal utility district may not be done in the ETJ or the city limits of Lago Vista without our permission and going through a fairly substantial process. So again, you can't form the MUD or other special districts like a WC and ID without visiting with us and getting permission and having the agreements, et cetera, et cetera.
If I may, Council, my apologies. We already have a MUD inside our city limits that people may not be aware of. Pretty much all of the Marshall's subdivision is in a MUD that we are working with our attorney that we have retained to get rid of that MUD. Believe it or not.
There's a MUD in the ETJ. I would just point out that there's a, our ETJ goes all the way down, extraterritorial jurisdiction outside the city limits goes all the way down to Point Venture. And there is a MUD in that area that in the ETJ. But this is the first I've heard of a MUD inside Marshall's Harbor.
Yes, sir. Marshall's Harbor and a chunk of Marshall's Vista.
When was that built? Do you know?
I am not sure. I didn't really look into it, but in discussion with our consultant, it seemed that we would be able to, because they have not been active in many years, we'd be able to easily remove it.
Could be that Gary Player thing.
Yes.
What is,
sure.
Yeah, but I don't believe that. I'd like to see the documentation of that MUD.
Absolutely.
what's the worst case scenario on this CCN between us and Jonestown?
I just wanted to make that clarification. It's not a terrible situation, none whatsoever. It only if a developer comes in at the entrance of the hollows, for example, and theoretically, they'll have to go to the Jonestown Water Supply Corporation for service first. And if they get denied, then they can come to us.
Okay.
So, but they have to go to them first. That is the only caveat.
But the only thing they could get from Jonestown is septic, correct?
No, they can't get septic.
They have water. Jonestown Water Supply Corporation has water service.
Has it, they do have water service.
It is not as big, I did mention it, but it is not a major issue. I just wanted to clarify that it does not go all the way to the city boundaries, city limits.
Can you describe the area that you're referring to? When you speak of the entrance into the hollows, are we talking about the entrance into the hollows that is part of Jonestown or part of Lago Vista?
Part of Lago Vista. So when you enter, we go down the hill on Destination Way.
Destination Way, yeah.
So including that building that is off to the left and goes down maybe about a third of a mile or so.
Doesn't our ETJ extend all the way to
Yes, sir.
Old Burnett Road?
Yes, sir.
So that area that you're describing to me sounds like it is part of Lago Vista.
It's part of the city limits of Lago Vista,
So
that
I
is
don't-
correct.
I don't
Those are
understand.
two different things. The CCN boundary is basically, it's a service boundary.
I got you now. So that's coming onto our.
Right, you can
ETJ.
have overlap if, depends on what happened in the past.
I understand that.
When you have a CCN application, typically a utilities commission will send out a notice to anyone that opposes it, anyone that has any comments. For whatever reason, the city of Lago Vista in the past, maybe what happened before the city was a city, nobody opposed it.
Well, I was under the impression that we were providing water to
We are.
the hollows.
We are. So that's where it gets confusing, because we are providing water in somebody else's boundary.
Service, that's what we're trying to correct.
That's what we're
So
trying
it's,
to correct.
yeah. So basically, Eric, what we're doing is talking about passing something so that we can get this all straightened out.
It's, yes, that is, we establish our own boundary, just like a city wants to establish a city limit. When a utility provider should, it's recommended, you should establish a service boundary, a legal service boundary with the state.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And it's okay to have overlapping, an area that has an overlap.
Not with another CCN,
No?
no. You
Not
cannot
unless
have
you're
overlap.
duly certificated.
Right.
Typically, you're not going to be overlapping. It's not unusual, and sorry, Eric.
It's okay, go ahead.
It's not unusual to have CCNs inside a city that has grown over time, or in a city's ETJ, or MUDs in the ETJ, because those things happen over time. So it's not unusual. If you look at Houston, they're everywhere. Austin has them too. But it's important to make clear to any developer that's coming in, who they have to come to first. And therefore, if there is an entity with a CCN territory, the city wants to establish its CCN territory, and under the laws in the water code, the city has some authority to take some parts of their CCN if the city wants to make sure that any developers have to come to us first as a city. Because that's really what it's about, is you're telling anybody who wants water service who you go to first, or who you go to only.
Gotcha. So we set our boundaries for this CCN, then we go to Jonestown, get them to release that. Do we have to redo our boundary at that point, or will we already have?
It's part of that process. We would amend our CCN territory to take over that piece, assuming the application is approved with the PUC.
So the area in question then is between Destination Way and Old Burnett Road? Is that the area that we're talking about?
There's two areas. There's that one plus the other area down by the water plant.
Down
the
by
new
the
water
water
plant.
plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure
Got it.
council is not simply just concentrate. That is not the main purpose of this application.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Well, we-
a secondary thought.
But we still provide water to the hollows.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Just want to make that clear.
And this takes 18 months from now?
Mm-hmm.
Used to only take 12 months.
PUC is a very, very thorough agency. They're gonna put us through our paces.
So while this is in process, if somebody comes to us, do they still have to come to us first because we've got the process started, or?
They,
No.
in theory, if they're looking to develop property that's within, Jonestown WSC, CCN territory, in theory, they're supposed to go to them first. If Jonestown can't provide the service, then they can come to us. Hopefully over time, we can get it corrected or at least get it adjusted so that it's clear that we're the service provider exclusively for that area.
And that's what's happened. That's why we serve the Hollows.
Right.
This would make it official for all of that area.
What about in the ETJ? Would they still have to come to us first in the meantime, or?
If we're the primary service provider, if there's no one else that has a CCN in that area, then they come to us. But if somebody else has a CCN territory or boundary, then they would go to them first.
Okay.
The CCN boundary, just FYI, council, only goes, the one that we're applying for only goes to the city limits. One of the things that the Public Utilities Commission requires you to do is to justify how and when you are going to provide services to the ETJ. We had a hard time justifying that, not in the comp plan, things like that. So we just opted to just use the city limit boundary instead.
So how long does the amendment process take? So if we have say we have a subdivision, so an area that's currently in the ETJ, but then they want a developer comes in, wants to develop it, become part of the city.
Right. And typically, the way I've seen it elsewhere is you can just make them part of the city. And typically through a development agreement, sometimes you can have it written in the development agreement that the developer will amend the CCN on behalf of the city.
You make them pay for it,
Awesome.
because it's not a free process.
All right. Awesome.
Costs money.
So in our master plan, within the city limits, we've got a couple areas that we've identified as too difficult and too costly to provide water services to. How does this affect those? If someone wants to, say, do rainwater collection condominium project or something, if we have determined we can't afford to provide it, now are we going to be obligated to?
That's the other side of the sword. That once you have a CCN boundary, you have a legal obligation to provide service within that area.
But not at our cost.
Yeah, but not right. It's, they pay for it.
Yes, yeah.
But they get bids from us, which could be off the charts, right?
No, no. If they're in the city limits or were annexed, and the annexation ordinance is going to say we have to provide service, that means we hold out, correct me where I go wrong, we hold out our utility system to folks in the city and in the ETJ for that matter, but our subdivision regulations call for the developer to pay for the lines to hook up where we end. And, or other improvements that are needed, lift stations or.
We create the CCN, now we're obligated, or they're obligated to accept whatever price we give them?
I would say we're in exactly the same place.
Council, if I may.
Which is, we've held out our system, but our regulations call for them to pay for all the improvements to extend to his development.
Mayor, to clarify, Councilor Bartholow is asking about our estimate process for utility line extension. The answer is we provide that utility line estimate, but the individual property owner, developer, or builder can still provide that service themselves. They're not required to use that estimate. Our estimate's just used if they want to go through our process, they can, or they can do it themselves.
Right, but they still have to hook to our service.
Correct.
So if it's over a mountain, they're going to find a cost that is not going to be acceptable to them, basically rendering their property useless.
Potentially,
if
they could
if we do this,
that challenge.
it's not that way right now, right?
Well,
It is that way right now.
It is that way right now.
yeah, and for instance, to Sarah, Lakeside formed a public improvement district to pay, among other things, to extend utilities.
Yeah. They would have to do some sort of PID or something.
Some other, yeah.
So
there's several.
how does this change that?
It's really kind of apples and oranges. We have our subdivision ordinance, that lays out how they are required, how they can, pay for the, improvements that are needed to provide them service. The CCN simply requires us to provide the service if the facilities, if they provide the line extension. If they don't provide the line extension, the PUC's not gonna make us go and build the infrastructure. But if the service is available, we have to give them water. We have to provide the service. So they still have to comply with all of our subdivision regs.
Right,
They have to
right.
fund the building of the infrastructure. That side is all within our subdivision ordinances and our development regulations. The CCN just says, you have to provide continuous and adequate service. We can't turn the faucet off on them.
Right.
We can't choose not to provide them water.
But it's just like
We
that-
have to provide it if the facilities are available.
It's just like that other group that came from Houston that's gonna do a TIRR to get the water and to provide services to that development.
So if it's an individual, it's different than a developer, because the development standards,
No,
Well, this
Yeah,
is
it
a
is
subdivision.
different. It is different.
why is it different?
Well,
subdivision
the
requirements.
manager described how we extend lines to existing platted lots within the city of Lago Vista. And who pays for that? The folks that are doing the building do that. If you're platting property that's not subdivided and you're platting it, then those water and wastewater lines are extended through those regulations.
Right.
Right.
Or if
let
you're
me- Let me
replatting.
ask you another question here. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the CCN that we're applying for is just going to end at our city limits.
That is correct.
Why would we not extend it to our ETJ?
We had a difficult time justifying in our application that we had enough requests or need to our ETJ. Because you have to justify, somebody sends you, wants to apply for a PID or a PDD, and they're in the ETJ, you just have to say that you had that overall need in the ETJ to extend your services or to extend the boundaries. of that
So-
area.
We can't make our CCN as big as we want to just because we want to.
Well,
No, wait a minute. Doesn't it seem reasonable then that if the developers that are going to be developing in our ETJ, in the Hollows area, if they request services from us,
The Hollows is in the city limits. Some of it, that's correct, my apologies.
yeah, right, so. So the new part that's coming online, is that in our ETJ or in the city limits? In the city limits, okay. Well, what I'm getting at is it a more costly thing? I'm hearing you say that you have to justify extending the CCN to something outside your city limits. But if we have a developer come in and request services, are we then only going to extend the CCN to just cover their area, or can we go all the way to the end?
You have to cover their area unless there's other need in that area, maybe a
So it's on a
discussion.
piecemeal basis?
Gotta have a need
After you
first.
do this first one, yes, unless sometimes you could possibly develop a utilities master plan that will show expansion all the way up to your ETJ.
Okay.
And through that, you could possibly justify that boundary expansion.
But we don't have any of that right now.
We don't have any of that.
Not at the moment, definitely not on the sewer side.
Right.
And the utility commission is not going to allow us to go out to areas outside our city limits and dictate to those people that they have to come
And-
to us first without us being able to show a need.
So I'm still curious about someone within our city limits that has a $200,000 line extension, which I've seen a couple, then they still have the ability to be off the grid, right? They can still provide their own water.
With the way this works, once you have a CCN, they'd have to get a letter from the city that stating that the city is not willing to pay for the expenses to provide them with service, and they can take that letter as a justification to the Public Utilities Commission saying that, look, the city is not providing water for me, therefore I have to look for another source of water.
And then they
Yes,
drill
they
their
do
own
not,
well.
they do
or
not
whatever.
have to, they do not have to tie in. They do not have to.
Well, according to the Public Utilities Commission, now, if we're talking about subdivision regulations and things like that, still been maybe I'm not as well versed on that one.
I think our regulations generally require a hook-on unless it's infeasible.
300 things that comes to mind. That may not be accurate, but it comes to mind.
It's that, yeah, that's,
I think that's right. 300 is the number that I have in my head.
It's still mind-boggling to me that we provide water to the hollows, even the parts of the hollows that are in Jonestown. We provide water to them, and yet we can't extend our CCN to cover that area, the one that we're applying for?
Not if there's already another CCN there.
We might not make that same decision today.
Okay, all right.
Which there is.
If I'm
and that's why
understanding this
After we get our
right.
CCN, we will go to Jonestown and ask them to release it, and then we will extend our CCN to cover that. But we have to get our portion in place before we can go to Jonestown.
Okay.
And the way I understand it, the only thing this is doing is selecting somebody to start the application process.
That's correct.
We're not doing any more than just saying,
Yep.
here you go ahead.
Once, I do want to caution, once the application process does start, if it does get approved, there's really no stopping it unless,
Correct.
okay,
Okay,
But we need it.
absolutely.
there you go.
Make a motion.
But if one clarification for me is that if someone wants to build off the grid, if some better technology comes up and someone has a house on the outskirts of our service and they would like to be self-sustaining and not draw on our system, they have that right as an individual.
There are a couple of options for property owners who own over 25 acres to opt out during the CCN development process. So anybody who owns property within the area where we're establishing our CCN, because we're doing only the city limits, it's a little different. But if we were going beyond our city limits because there was a demonstrated need, and that's a key factor for PUC, if we were going beyond that, they would look at, give those folks the opportunity to opt out. If you're in our city limits, unless it's physically infeasible to provide you service, you are required to get service from the city.
Right now, our ordinance says over 300 feet. So what we have in our ordinance, that feasibility thing is set at 300 feet. So if they're over 300 feet from our water lines, they do not have to. It's what we call unfeasible.
Okay.
And then
And the
once-
CCN doesn't change that, is what you just said.
CCN doesn't change.
Even if you have less than 20 acres, 25 acres.
Correct.
So, because we have a lot of those lots that are on the outlying services, it would be great if I went to the Water Now Alliance with these guys, and we learned there are a lot of decentralizations of utilities, which is kind of a new method, and we're in the right terrain to be able to take advantage of some of that, to not have to just keep digging and putting pipes in the ground everywhere.
And we have existing customers, or not customers, but existing homeowner, property owners that are on wells in the city limits. It will not change that.
If they came to us and they said, I want service from you, we would have to go through the process to analyze whether or not we could provide service to them. And if we could provide service within the bounds of what's on our ordinances today, and technically, then they could go to the PUC and say, PUC, they're not giving me service. They technically can do it, their regs would allow for it, they can give me service, and so we would end up having a discussion with the PUC. The opposite is also true. If we physically can't do it, or based on the way our regs are written, then they don't have to. be connected.
Right.
But they cannot serve anybody else. Like, they can't provide water service
Right.
to anybody else.
Got
It's
it.
only for their property's use.
Gotcha.
It won't put an undue burden on anybody.
Us included as a city, we just don't want to have to extend utilities where we don't want to.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to, for resolution 1795, a resolution for a designated official to be responsible for acting for on behalf of the city and dealing with the Texas Public Utilities Commission and the city to requesting consideration of the application for a certificate of convenience and necessity for water and wastewater.
Second.
So do we have to state that it's designating the city manager or is that because it's in the resolution?
Mayor, no, it's in the resolution, so it's
Okay.
good.
Just want to make sure. All right, so I have a motion
I second.
and Frank seconded it, so I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Sir, you can start the process.
Thanks, sir.
And I forgot what number I'm on. Number 9. Discussion and possible action concerning the funding commitment agreement for the Rusty Allen Airport between the City of Lago Vista and Rusty Allen Airport Property Owners Association Incorporated. Who's got lead on this one?
Mayor, this item was brought back up by council at the last meeting, and we took a vote to reconsider the funding commitment agreement between the city and Rusty Allen Airport. Inside of your agenda packet, I have included the approved and signed funding commitment agreement, and then the letter of acceptance from TxDOT Aviation.
Got it.
All right. So is there anyone that wants to speak on this?
I do. I
Yes,
want
sir.
to cover two items, or two tranches, if you will. One is the funding agreement itself. And then how, and the fact that we don't really know what aircraft we have at any one time on the airport. And part of our discussion was opportunity cost lost. And how do we account for that? And then reviewing the airport operations, I have respect for the airport, and I think that there's an opportunity there to take advantage of our position close to Austin. And part of this would be is if we could find more aircraft to tie down, would we ever be able to afford a hangar to increase people to come in? And then on the real far end of this thing, could we get larger aircraft, which I think would be a key, but I think that requires land, and I think that's someplace else as far as we get there. But on this particular document, I went back to the $18,000 of 1999, and I counted the consumer price index formula as to this, and it came up to 27,000.
656.
Yeah, something like that. And that's the formula we're using. And it's so, I don't see why we would lower that amount. If we go to Article 3 prohibitions, this was part of the deal that we took out. We took out this first sentence that says, commercial aeronautic uses with the registration. It says the Rusty Allen Airport shall not permit any person or entity to engage in temporary or permanent commercial aeronautical activity on the land owned by the POA, described here and without appropriate permits issued by the city. Now, they wanted that removed. My suggestion would be the start of that sentence would be the City of Lago Vista shall not permit any person or entity to engage in any temporary or permanent for the rest of that subject without appropriate permits issued by the city. So we kind of get an idea of that, what how many aircraft do we have out there at any particular time? And then on this further down sentence, I don't think it's in the PO, it's a copy. The city acknowledges that there may be commercial leases of Rusty Allen Airport property, member property, and requests commercial tenants into the individual through the fence agreements. I would change that request to require. commercial tenants into individual through the fence. This is pretty much the only place we ever talk about through the fence. It follows that individual members agree to inform the tenants of the through the fence agreement required by the city and will not be held responsible for the administration nor of any noncompliance by tenants, which I would continue. But we would need their support to identify and require them to sign these documents so that we know who's there at any particular time. And I mentioned this to Danny, the only other time we'll ever know if an aircraft is there is if when they do their patrol, if they start taking down registration numbers. But I don't think that that works because the guys at the airport know what's going on at the airport. So that, and we talked about a lost economic opportunity cost of up to 20 planes a month, which was $6,000. So if we can capture that, if we get an idea of who's out there, if we do have 20 planes a month out there, do we have a capability of expanding our tie downs, possibly a hangar, which I think people like, and taking advantage of the proximity, but at least making money and knowing where our future lies. My last comment was we did not discuss this at all. It was taken out of the copy we submitted to the TxDOT. But it says, this copy says the Rusty Island Airport agrees to abide by the airport rules and regulations in effect as of the date of this agreement and as may be amended from time to time. And I see no reason to take that out. We never discussed it, but it's in our document, but it was not in the document we submitted to TxDOT.
What was that last section?
It's F in the document that you presented to us, the city council version at this meeting last time, February 21st. It was item F, under 6 miscellaneous.
Mayor, I just want to clarify, the council did not discuss the item when the vote was taken. However, we did present that, and the minutes will show we presented that as the changes that had been discussed and removed. And the staff summary shows that too, so that section.
Well, I missed it.
But we didn't discuss it as the council after presentation. We only talked about 2 sections in the last time when this was actually approved. You're correct.
All right. But I don't see why they would protest.
Well, don't we have a separate document for rules and regulations?
Mayor, yeah, we have the rules and regulations, which therefore.
And they're obligated to follow the rules
Correct.
and regulations.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't know if you necessarily need it in the funding document.
And I believe that is why it was taken out, because we already had something in place and that we didn't need it in the funding agreement.
Okay. Well, the dollar amount and that section 1, which Mr. Peck said that they would leave it in if we wanted it in there. But that's the only place where we can ask for their eyes on the aircraft out there. And it's the only mention of the through the fence. So I'd like to motion that we increase the dollar amount.
Well,
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure we're following the proper procedures. This agreement was fully executed by all the parties.
Correct.
And so I understand that there are discussion items about changes that you want to make. And if that's what the council wants to do, then we would have to put together an amendment, or depending on what it is, an addendum to this agreement, and go back to the airport association to get their agreement on it. Unilaterally, the council can't make these changes. So if that's the direction we want to go, then we need to propose an amendment to the agreement.
As far as how this document reads, the only thing I was concerned about in this document was I was told that the dollar amount that needed to be collected from the residents that are up there, and the tie downs needed to be the same number.
and I wanted clarification from TxDOT and the FAA, and they said that the 23,400 is fine, and the $50 is fine for the tie downs. So I had no problem with this document. If this number 23,400 and the tie downs had to be the same, it would have been at the $23 level, and that was unacceptable to me as a tie down fee. $50, which is in this document for a tie down fee, and the 23,400 covers the maintenance that we do on the
Maintenance is 44,000.
40, yeah, but between the tie downs and the 23,400, you know.
How much do we get from tie downs?
Mayor, roughly, if we use the same number of airplanes now that we have at an annual rate at the $50, we're going to say that's about $4,000 a year, the way we've got it now. So you've got the $4,000, and then you've got the other one you did mention, but we talked about was the fuel sales.
With the fuel sales.
And so we get close to that point.
$50, should that be 23 that he's speaking about?
No, because TxDOT and the FAA said that we could have our $50 tie down.
I would make the argument, though, that if that figure had been 30,000, then they would have said it was okay. Whatever the figure is that we agreed to, that was presented at that time and sent to TxDOT and the FAA, they accepted it as being okay.
Right.
But it could have been a bigger number and been okay.
So here's my,
They received the update, and that's about all they said.
so here's my, I want a clarification here. So we've got an executed document accepted by TxDOT and sent to the FAA. So to change it, that requires the amendment.
Yes.
The amendment has to be approved by both sides. If we put forth an amendment and we approve it, but they do not, this document just still is in force, correct?
That's correct.
So, knowing the POA that I have dealt with for the last 14 months
Right.
on this one document,
Right.
they will never sign it.
That's right.
So we could throw out every amendment we want to, they're not gonna sign it. So this signed document is in force, no matter what. 'Cause I do not, I could be wrong, we could try it, but I do not believe POA will sign it.
Unless there's some basis for a claim that it was not executed legally, it's your document.
Mayor, and I'd clarify too, the actual motion made by Councilor Collins was to reconsider voting on the agreement. So I think that was the whole intent, was to reconsider the whole vote, not, we don't have any changes presented, because I think Aaron can clarify. Following the rules of order, procedure, whatever the rules are, we're not proposing any amendments at this time. It was only to reconsider a vote on the actual item presented before council before, and that was the motion to reconsider. It had to happen at the next meeting per legal, and so that's where we'd be at. We wouldn't have the opportunity to do any changes now. We would just have to go back to the drawing board and bring that back at a next council meeting, and back to where Aaron was talking about. We would have a lot of work, but I think that's, if the motion's made, Mayor,
Okay.
I believe what we were talking about last meeting, the only thing you can consider is re-vote on this if that's where the motion's made. I think that's the way it plays out. They couldn't give any other instruction this time. Is that correct?
That's correct. But I think the difficulty in the process is if the motion to reconsider what the council voted on was made after the document was actually executed, it's too late. That's the problem. Is if the document was fully executed.
That document was fully
Yeah,
executed.
You can only reconsider it before it's executed.
Right.
Once it's executed, the opportunity you've waived that opportunity. So that's the piece that I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So this is all moot.
Yes.
Yes. Now you have the opportunity if you want to try to go the route of some type of amendment or addendum. Likely there would have to be give and take if you want to get someone to the table to re-execute something new and try to get it approved through TxDOT and FAA. But yes.
For the record, that's no longer me. I'm no longer the president of the POA. It's James Peck. So,
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to go through this with the airport anymore. I make a motion that we approve the document as it is. We have TxDOT's blessing, we have the FAA blessing, if TxDOT and the FAA want to come back and change it sometime in the future, then they have the option to come back and tell us something different, but they gave us our blessing. They said we're within the law. I make a motion that we approve it.
It's already approved.
It's already approved. If it's,
There would be no action that would need.
We don't need to do any action?
I'll just withdraw.
Okay.
If I don't really want to go through that again. I just wanted to, I didn't know if we could change the amount to look into that. But if it's already approved, there's.
So we don't have to do it, okay.
Correct. No action is needed unless there was some motion to deny his request to reconsider.
Got it.
That's interesting. I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm kind of where the manager was a second ago. There is an action on our agenda to vote on it.
To reconsider.
It was a reconsideration, and there's a motion to not change it.
But
And I
Aaron
think we have to,
Aaron just pointed out we cannot have a vote to reconsider.
Well, the vote to reconsider's already been made. That was already done.
I think the key
It's a
thing
parliamentary
is
issue.
that Councilmember Collins has withdrawn his request for reconsideration, and that can
Close the gap?
close it.
Would it be better to me to make the motion and have it turned down?
No, I think that makes it messier.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so we can move on. No action taken.
No action taken.
All right, what number am I on?
She's good, I'm good.
That's it?
I'm on 10 now.
You're on 10.
Discussion and possible action on a resolution 19-1791 by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, declaring certain real property owned by the City of Lago Vista to be exempt property pursuant to Texas Local Government Code Section 272.001 Bravo, prior to subsequently considering the conveyance of that property in accordance with applicable state laws and in a manner beneficial to the City of Lago Vista.
Mayor, we've discussed this item a couple of times. The goal of what we're trying to do is there are pieces of property that the city currently owns that we would like to provide an opportunity for adjacent property owners to acquire those pieces of property. We've discussed this, we've put together a couple of options, and then we've provided a map of these tracts of property, pieces of property that we're asking council to declare certain tracts of property as included in this listing. We've talked about this previously. We have a couple options. We can take action as it's presented. We can make changes to what has been presented, or we can still table for further discussion and or a planning session.
move to table.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to table. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion is tabled.
Consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are to be considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. And we only have one. It is number 11, approval of the February 21st, 2019. Oh, I'm sorry, there are two. Approval of the February 21, 2019 and March 7, 2019 council meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No, I approved it, I'm just speaking out
Okay.
loud.
Hearing none, motion carries unanimous.
Discussion. Discussion only of a funding assistance request from the Turnback Canyon Trail Conservancy.
Mayor, this item has been brought to us by Turnback Canyon Trail Conservancy as originally it was going to come to the council as a budgetary process request. The request is for $2,000 to use in their project to build a citywide trail system. During the budget process, they didn't get the request in time. Per previous council, the statement was made that if someone wanted to bring back items to the council during the year, then we would welcome that. So these guys worked back through their processes and they updated their request. They're requesting the city allocate $2,000 to help them proceed in accomplishing their goal of building a trail system within the city. We put this on here as discussion only because this is the first time it's been presented to council, and we included the letter that we received from the president, Carl Diekman, as the supporting documentation.
Got it. And this is from the funding source, nonprofit organization, non-departmental budget, 6,100 professional services.
Correct. Yes, sir. We would have included that in that area during the budget process, but since it wasn't there, that's where we're at.
Anybody have any questions?
So we can't take action on this tonight?
Negative.
All right.
I'm good.
We will bring this back at the next meeting. For an action item. Should you have any questions before then, Mr. Diekman has said, feel free to contact him. We have a couple of their letters and some information about them. But we're excited. We think this is a pretty good project. If you remember, the city and Turnback Canyon Trail Conservancy both submitted grant applications to Texas Parks and Wildlife as a joint effort to try and support similar projects here in the city.
Got it.
All right. 13, city manager report.
Mayor, my last report did everything else in the early part, but I do want to point out that the city council, which minutes will be approved at a later date, had a really good meeting with the school board. We had great turnout. Our council was there, their members were there. We were able to discuss some of the things coming up. And so for our citizens to know, I think, pretty confident that moving forward, the city and the schools have a really strong working relationship, and hopefully that dialogue will consist and we can do some things together as we work to make our community better. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, future meetings. 14, consider our schedule and items for future council meetings. I show we have council liaison reports, landscaping ordinance, planning and zoning update, already on that list, but I don't see a time frame associated with them. Do we know?
Mayor, one of the things that we're leaving that council liaison reports on there, and that'll be without a date. Whenever a committee has a report to provide back, we'll let that happen at any time. Right. Landscaping ordinance are pretty close, and then P&Z, once they get their plan, they'll present that back. The only thing we did confirm was with Chief Donnie Norman of our ESD to do his Firewise presentation.
All right. I have... when are we going to, sometime we need to schedule, have we set a time when we're going to open up the naming process for our park? I know we discussed that at one point. Did we set a?
No, sir. No. But we can start as soon as you're ready.
Hey, Josh, Mr. Mayor, on this May 2nd meeting where Chief Donnie presentation on Firewise, can he give us an update on the emergency building that he's setting up over it?
Yes, sir. I'll request that from him.
Yeah. He's been doing a lot of work over there on that. I'd like to see what it looks like.
So we've cleared ground, so we might as well, May 2nd, let's
discuss the name.
Discuss how we're gonna pursue that.
Okay.
I'm sure it's, well, I'll leave it till then. And I have one other thing I need for the April 18th meeting. I need to go through the process of identifying my upcoming vacancies and starting the process for recruiting, taking applications for my youth advisory committee so that I can name my new members in May.
Okay.
Anybody else have any future? We'll have short meetings.
I did good at this.
All right. Does anybody have any reason to go into executive session?
On me.
Can I ask a question before you close? I bid on one
Would
of
you
the
please-
properties. Sure.
would you please come in?
Jim Fellers, I own several properties here. And I had bid on one of the properties that was advertised for sale. I was just wondering, I thought there was to be some resolution on that tonight. Is there?
Mayor, what we have
any-
is we'll be able to go ahead and sign that document and submit it to go through to finalize a closing date.
Okay, great.
We'll be good.
So that's.
Are we good to go with you after
that's
the
been
meeting?
addressed. Yeah, I was just wondering what the update was.
We're
Okay.
good to go.
Yes. All right, if anybody, nobody has anything else, I call the meeting adjourned at 8:11 PM. Thank you all very much.
Danny, I got another question.
And Larry didn't stick around. I mean,
No. He